Oldsmobile, 1897 to 2004. Oldsmobile's story began before almost every other American automaker. Founded by Ransom E. Olds in 1897, it built one of the first mass-produced cars in the world, the curved dash runabout. For decades, Oldsmobile sat comfortably inside General Motors as a brand known for quiet innovation, the automatic transmission, the rocket V8, and futuristic styling that helped define the 1950s and 60s. By the 1990s, though, the identity that once made Oldsmobile distinct began to fade. Its buyers aged, its models overlapped with Buick and Pontiac, and attempts to reinvent the brand with sportier or smaller cars never took hold. By the late 1990s, sales had fallen below half of what they'd been 2 decades earlier. GM tried one last reboot with cars like the Alero and Aurora, but the damage was done. The company was losing money on nearly every unit, and by 2000, GM announced that Oldsmobile, after 103 years, would be phased out. The last car rolled off the line in 2004. Plymouth, 1928 to 2001. Plymouth was born in 1928 as Chrysler's answer to Ford and Chevrolet, a mid-priced brand aimed at the heart of the American middle class. It thrived almost immediately. By the 1930s, Plymouth had become Chrysler's best-selling division, offering reliable cars with advanced engineering and clean design. For decades, it was a core part of the Big Three rivalry that defined the American car market. Through the 1950s and 60s, Plymouth built icons like the Belvedere, Fury, and the Barracuda, the first pony car to challenge Ford's Mustang. In the 1970s, it produced muscle legends such as the Roadrunner and GTX. But by the 1980s, the brand began losing its identity. Chrysler's lineup became crowded, and Plymouth models were often indistinguishable from Dodge or Chrysler counterparts. By the late 1990s, sales had collapsed. The brand that once sold nearly 1 million cars a year was moving fewer than 200,000. Chrysler attempted a revival with the retro-styled PT Cruiser and Prowler, but both were moved to other divisions before Plymouth could benefit. In 2001, after 73 years of production, Chrysler quietly ended the brand. The last Plymouth, a Neon, rolled off the line that summer. Mercury, 1938 to 2011. Mercury was created by Ford in 1938 to fill the gap between the everyday Ford lineup and the luxury of Lincoln. The brand was meant to give middle-class buyers something a little more stylish and refined without the price of a true luxury car. In the 1940s and 50s, Mercury carved out its own identity. It built cars with powerful V8s and sleek, distinctive designs, earning a reputation for comfort and performance. During the 1960s, it became a legitimate player in the muscle and mid-luxury markets, with cars like the Cougar, Cyclone, and Marquis. For a while, Mercury stood for a balance of sophistication and sport. But by the late 1980s, the brand's purpose began to blur. Its cars became rebadged, Fords, same platforms, same drivetrains, just slightly different trim. Buyers noticed, and sales steadily declined. Efforts to reinvent Mercury with small cars like the Capri or sedans like the Sable never reignited interest. By the 2000s, the lineup had dwindled to just a few models, all nearly identical to their Ford equivalents. The brand's identity, once positioned as a step above Ford, had all but vanished. In 2010, Ford announced the end of Mercury as part of a broader plan to streamline operations and focus on Ford and Lincoln. Production ended in early 2011, closing the book on a nameplate that had lasted more than 70 years. Pontiac, 1926 to 2010. Pontiac began in 1926 as a companion brand to General Motors' Oakland division, designed to offer affordable performance. Within just a few years, it outgrew its parent brand. By 1931, Pontiac had replaced Oakland entirely, a rare case where the junior marque survived while the senior one vanished. For decades, Pontiac thrived on style and speed. The 1950s brought the wide-track era, emphasizing performance handling. The 1960s made Pontiac a household name thanks to icons like the GTO, Firebird, and Grand Prix. It was GM's youth-oriented, performance-driven division, often billed as the brand for drivers who wanted excitement over luxury. But by the 1980s and 1990s, that identity started to blur. Corporate cost-cutting led to platform sharing, and many Pontiacs became indistinguishable from Chevrolets with different grilles. The performance edge faded, and sales followed. Attempts to revive the brand with cars like the Solstice and G8 came too late. When GM entered bankruptcy in 2009, Pontiac was one of 4 divisions cut to save costs. The brand was officially discontinued in 2010, ending 84 years of production. Hummer, 1992 to 2010. Hummer began as a civilian version of the military's Humvee, a vehicle built for battlefields, not boulevards. AM General launched the original Hummer H1 in 1992, and it immediately stood out: massive, boxy, loud, and unapologetically inefficient. Arnold Schwarzenegger famously lobbied to bring it to the public, and his endorsement helped make it a symbol of 1990s excess and off-road bravado. General Motors acquired the brand in 1999 and expanded the lineup with the H2 and H3, designed to be more practical while keeping the same rugged image. For a few years, sales boomed. The H2 in particular became a pop culture icon, larger than life and instantly recognizable. But by the late 2000s, times had changed. Gas prices spiked, environmental awareness grew, and public sentiment turned against oversized, gas-guzzling SUVs. The Great Recession hit soon after, and GM's 2009 bankruptcy forced hard choices. Hummer, with its low fuel economy and shrinking sales, didn't fit the future. GM attempted to sell the brand to a Chinese company, Sichuan Tengzhong, but the deal collapsed under regulatory pressure. In 2010, GM officially shut Hummer down. A decade later, the name returned under GMC as an all-electric vehicle, a modern twist on the same larger-than-life attitude. Saturn, 1985 to 2010. Saturn began as one of General Motors' most ambitious experiments. Announced in 1985 and launched in 1990, it was created to compete directly with the growing wave of Japanese imports from Toyota and Honda. GM called Saturn a different kind of car company, promising new engineering, non-union factories, and a no-haggle sales approach that appealed to younger, pragmatic buyers. For a while, it worked. Early Saturns were well-built, affordable, and earned a loyal following. The brand's customer service model became legendary, and Saturn dealerships developed almost a cult-like community. Sales peaked in the mid-1990s, making it seem like GM had finally cracked the import-dominated compact market. But as the decade went on, GM's investment slowed. Saturn's products aged, and newer models were built on shared GM platforms instead of unique designs. The different kind of car company became just another GM division. By the time of GM's bankruptcy in 2009, Saturn's sales had fallen sharply. GM attempted to sell the brand to Penske Automotive Group, but the deal collapsed when Penske couldn't secure another manufacturer to supply future vehicles. Without a buyer, Saturn was shut down in 2010. Studebaker, 1852 to 1966. Studebaker's story began long before the automobile. Founded in 1852 in South Bend, Indiana, the company started as a wagon maker, building durable vehicles for farmers, settlers, and even the U.S. Army. When the automobile age arrived, Studebaker successfully transitioned from horse-drawn wagons to gasoline-powered cars, becoming one of America's most respected automakers by the 1920s. For decades, Studebaker stood out for its craftsmanship and innovation. It introduced sleek designs, dependable engines, and features often ahead of their time. The 1950 Bullet Nose models and the 1953 Starliner Coupe were styling milestones. But despite creative engineering, the company couldn't keep pace with the Big Three's economies of scale. By the late 1950s, Studebaker's finances were crumbling. The company merged with Packard in 1954 in a last-ditch effort to survive, but both brands were already struggling. Quality suffered, dealer confidence waned, and losses mounted. Production slowed through the early 1960s. The South Bend plant closed in 1963, with final assembly continuing in Hamilton, Ontario, until March 1966, when the last Studebaker, a turquoise cruiser sedan, rolled off the line. Packard, 1899 to 1958. Packard began in 1899 in Warren, Ohio, and quickly became synonymous with American luxury. From its earliest cars, the company emphasized refinement, engineering precision, and understated elegance. By the 1920s and 30s, Packard was the choice of presidents, industrialists, and film stars. Its slogan, "Ask the man who owns one," perfectly captured its reputation for craftsmanship and class. The post-war years, however, brought challenges. While Cadillac and Lincoln modernized with V8 engines, automatic transmissions, and fresh styling, Packard's conservative approach left it looking dated. Smaller competitors were vanishing, and the Big Three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, dominated production, pricing, and marketing. In 1954, Packard merged with Studebaker in hopes of survival, forming Studebaker-Packard Corporation. But the merger only worsened financial troubles. Both brands were struggling, and neither could support the other. Quality issues crept in, and Packard's identity as a luxury marque eroded quickly. By 1957, Packards were little more than rebadged Studebakers. The brand's prestige evaporated, and in 1958, production ceased altogether. DeSoto, 1928 to 1961. DeSoto was introduced by Chrysler in 1928 as a mid-priced brand meant to bridge the gap between Dodge and Chrysler. It launched to immediate success, selling over 80,000 cars in its first year, a record for a new American marque at the time. Named after Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto, the brand symbolized adventure, progress, and optimism during the booming late 1920s. That optimism didn't last long. The Great Depression hit soon after, shrinking the market for mid-tier cars. Although DeSoto weathered the storm, it never fully regained its early momentum. Over the following decades, it carved out a niche as a stylish, affordable alternative to Chrysler, often sharing mechanicals but featuring unique design, flourishes, and a sportier image. By the 1950s, Chrysler's lineup became overcrowded. Plymouth handled the entry-level segment. Dodge and Chrysler covered the middle and upper tiers, and DeSoto was squeezed in between. Despite solid models like the Firedome and Adventurer, sales dropped sharply. In 1960, DeSoto sold fewer than 3,000 cars, a fraction of its former totals. Chrysler officially ended the brand in 1961 after 33 years of production. Only a handful of cars were built that final year, assembled mostly from leftover parts. Hudson, 1909 to 1954. Hudson Motor Car Company was founded in 1909 in Detroit and quickly became known for building durable, well-engineered cars at reasonable prices. The company introduced several innovations, including one of the first balanced crankshaft straight-six engines, which made Hudson vehicles smoother and more reliable than many competitors. In the 1930s and 40s, Hudson developed a loyal following through strong engineering and racing success. But its defining achievement came in 1948 with the introduction of the step-down design, a revolutionary unibody construction that placed passengers inside the frame rails, lowering the center of gravity. The result was better handling, improved safety, and a modern, sleek profile. The step-down Hudsons were ahead of their time and dominated early NASCAR racing. The Hudson Hornet in particular became a legend, powerful, agile, and nearly unbeatable on the oval tracks of the early 1950s. But innovation couldn't save the company from economic reality. Hudson was too small to compete with the Big Three's massive production scale and marketing budgets. Development costs mounted and new models were delayed. In 1954, Hudson merged with Nash Kelvinator to form American Motors Corporation, AMC. Hudson production continued for a few more years under AMC before being phased out by 1957. Nash, 1916 to 1954. Nash Motors was founded in 1916 by Charles W. Nash, a former president of General Motors who wanted to build reliable, well-engineered cars under his own name. From the start, Nash focused on practicality and innovation rather than flash. The company earned a reputation for quality and value, often introducing features that were years ahead of competitors. In the 1930s, Nash pioneered weatherproof interiors and advanced heating systems, including the first fully integrated car heater, an amenity that became standard across the industry. During World War II, Nash built military vehicles and equipment, then returned to civilian production with modernized, aerodynamic designs that stood out in the late 1940s. The company's post-war cars, like the Nash Airflight, embraced futuristic styling and efficiency. Nash was also one of the first American automakers to recognize the potential of small cars, introducing the Nash Rambler in 1950, a compact, affordable model that arrived decades before small cars became mainstream in the US. But Nash faced the same problem as other independents: limited resources and increasing competition from Detroit's giants. To survive, Nash merged with Hudson in 1954 to create American Motors Corporation, AMC. The merger ended Nash-branded production, but its innovative spirit shaped AMC's approach for years to come. Kaiser-Frazer, 1945 to 1953. Kaiser-Frazer was one of the most ambitious post-war automotive ventures in the United States. Founded in 1945 by industrialist Henry J. Kaiser and automotive executive Joseph Frazer, the company sought to challenge Detroit's Big Three with bold styling and modern engineering. At first, it worked. With a market hungry for new cars after World War II, Kaiser-Frazer sold over 300,000 vehicles in 1947 alone. The cars were stylish and solidly built, with innovations like safety glass, spacious interiors, and advanced body design. The company even produced one of America's first compact cars, the Henry J, years before small cars became common. But as the post-war boom faded, Kaiser-Frazer's weaknesses became clear. The Big Three could build cars cheaper, faster, and in far greater numbers. Without the same economies of scale, Kaiser-Frazer couldn't match their prices or marketing power. Losses mounted, and by 1953, the company stopped producing passenger cars in the US. That same year, Kaiser merged with Willys-Overland, maker of the Jeep, shifting its focus to utility vehicles. The company eventually became Kaiser Jeep, which was later absorbed by American Motors and ultimately by Chrysler. Tucker, 1947 to 1949. The Tucker Corporation was one of the boldest and most controversial stories in American automotive history. Founded by Preston Tucker in 1947, the company set out to revolutionize car design and safety in a market dominated by conservative giants. Tucker's 48, later nicknamed the Tucker Torpedo, was decades ahead of its time. It featured a rear-mounted flat-six engine, a reinforced passenger cell, a padded dashboard, seat belts, disc brakes, and a unique center headlight that turned with the steering wheel. It looked futuristic and promised safety innovations no major automaker offered. But the industry establishment and government scrutiny quickly closed in. In 1949, the SEC launched an investigation into alleged stock fraud and mismanagement. Tucker and his executives were eventually acquitted, but the damage was done. Negative publicity destroyed public confidence, suppliers pulled out, and production halted after only 51 cars were built. Preston Tucker's vision was clear. He wanted to make the most advanced car America had ever seen. But between financial pressure, political resistance, and corporate rivalry, his dream ended before it could grow. Auburn, 1900 to 1937. Auburn began in 1900 in Auburn, Indiana, building mid-range automobiles that emphasized craftsmanship and elegant design. For the first 2 decades, the company remained small and relatively unknown, producing solid but conventional cars. That changed dramatically in the late 1920s when industrialist E.L. Cord took control. Under Cord's direction, Auburn transformed from a modest regional manufacturer into one of America's most stylish brands. The company introduced powerful straight-eight engines, vibrant two-tone paint schemes, and advanced features at affordable prices. Auburn's designs, especially the Speedster models, rivaled luxury marques for a fraction of the cost. The 1935 Auburn 851 Speedster became its most famous creation, a supercharged Art Deco masterpiece capable of over 100 miles per hour. But even world-class design couldn't shield Auburn from the realities of the Great Depression. The market for performance and luxury cars collapsed, and Cord's complex financial dealings added instability. By 1937, sales had dried up, and the Auburn Automobile Company closed its doors alongside Cord and Duesenberg, which were part of the same corporate group. Pierce Arrow, 1901 to 1938. Pierce Arrow began in Buffalo, New York in 1901 and quickly earned a reputation as one of America's premier luxury car manufacturers. Originally a maker of bicycles, the company shifted to automobiles at the dawn of the century and became synonymous with craftsmanship, refinement, and quiet prestige. By the 1910s, Pierce Arrow cars were the choice of presidents, royalty, and captains of industry. Every Pierce was hand-built, using top-quality materials and elegant design details like the company's signature fender-mounted headlights, a hallmark that set it apart from competitors. The brand was admired not for flash, but for dignified excellence. The 1920s were its golden years, but like most luxury marques, Pierce Arrow was hit hard by the Great Depression. Sales of high-end cars plummeted, and even a 1928 acquisition by the Studebaker Corporation couldn't reverse its decline. After Studebaker itself went bankrupt in 1933, Pierce Arrow tried to survive independently but lacked the capital to compete. By 1938, the factory closed for good. Duesenberg, 1913 to 1937. Few names in American automotive history carry the prestige of Duesenberg. Founded in 1913 by brothers Fred and August Duesenberg in Indianapolis, the company was built on engineering excellence and racing success. Their early cars were technologically advanced, featuring overhead cam engines and four-wheel brakes, innovations that were years ahead of most competitors. After World War I, Duesenberg focused on luxury performance cars, combining race-proven engineering with unmatched craftsmanship. The brand's reputation soared when E.L. Cord purchased it in 1926 and introduced the legendary Model J in 1928, a car that redefined luxury and power. With up to 265 horsepower, it was the fastest and most expensive American car of its era, owned by celebrities, industrialists, and royalty. The Great Depression, however, devastated the market for ultra-luxury automobiles. Sales collapsed, and even the engineering brilliance of the Model SJ supercharged version couldn't save the company. In 1937, after Cord's financial empire unraveled, Duesenberg ceased production. Cord, 1929 to 1937. Cord was born from the ambitions of E.L. Cord, the same industrialist who controlled Auburn and Duesenberg. Founded in 1929, the Cord brand was created to bridge the gap between Auburn's sporty elegance and Duesenberg's ultra-luxury, but with cutting-edge technology and futuristic design. The company's first car, the Cord L29, was America's first front-wheel drive production automobile. It offered superior handling and a low, sleek profile made possible by its unique drivetrain layout. The car looked like nothing else on the road, long, low, and modern, but it was expensive and its timing couldn't have been worse. The Great Depression hit just as production began, and sales never matched expectations. In 1936, Cord tried again with the 810 and 812 models, designed by Gordon Burig. These cars became instant icons. They featured hidden headlights, a coffin nose grille, and streamlined Art Deco styling that still looks modern today. But production was plagued by technical problems and financial strain. By 1937, E.L. Cord's entire automotive empire collapsed under the weight of the Depression and stock manipulation investigations. The Cord Automobile Company closed that same year. Edsel, 1958 to 1960. The Edsel stands as one of the most infamous failures in American automotive history, not because of poor engineering, but because of timing, marketing, and expectations that spiraled out of control. Launched by Ford Motor Company in 1958, Edsel was intended to fill the gap between Ford and Mercury, offering a stylish, mid-priced alternative. Ford poured nearly $400 million, about $4 billion today, into its development and promotion. The company promised something revolutionary: futuristic design, advanced technology, and a driving experience unlike anything else. But what arrived in showrooms looked unconventional and awkward to many buyers. The vertical horse collar grille became a punchline, and the car's styling didn't match the evolving late 1950s taste for cleaner, more restrained lines. Worse yet, the U.S. economy had entered a recession, and the market for mid-priced cars was shrinking fast. Quality issues also hurt early deliveries, as the cars were assembled using shared Ford and Mercury lines that weren't ready for the Edsel's unique parts. Despite solid performance and some genuine innovation, like the push-button transmission in the steering wheel, the negative press overwhelmed the launch. Sales never recovered. After just 3 model years and heavy financial losses, Ford pulled the plug in 1960. Willys-Overland, 1908 to 1963. Willys-Overland began in 1908 when John North Willys took control of the struggling Overland Automotive Division and turned it into one of America's most successful early car companies. By the 1910s, Willys-Overland was second only to Ford in total production, known for dependable, affordable cars that appealed to a wide audience. The company's most enduring legacy, however, came during World War II. In 1941, Willys won the government contract to mass-produce the military Jeep, a vehicle that became a symbol of American ingenuity and durability. After the war, the civilian version, the CJ2A, brought Jeep into everyday life and laid the foundation for the modern SUV. Despite the success of Jeep, Willys-Overland struggled with its passenger cars. The company lacked the scale and financial strength to compete with the Big Three. In 1953, Henry J. Kaiser's Kaiser Motors acquired Willys-Overland, merging it into Kaiser Willys and later renaming it Kaiser Jeep in 1963. That effectively ended the Willys brand as an independent automaker. Rambler, 1950 to 1969. Rambler was one of the most influential names in American automotive history, a brand that helped shape the idea of the practical, affordable compact car. Originally a model name revived by Nash Motors in 1950, the Rambler quickly became a symbol of efficiency during an era dominated by oversized sedans and chrome excess. When Nash merged with Hudson in 1954 to form American Motors Corporation, AMC, the Rambler name became central to the new company's identity. AMC used Rambler to carve out a niche the Big Three had ignored: small, well-built cars that delivered excellent fuel economy and sensible pricing. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, Rambler thrived while others struggled. The brand became the best-selling compact in America, even cracking the top 3 in national sales by 1961. But by the mid-1960s, the name began to feel dated. Younger buyers were drawn to sportier models like the Ford Mustang, and Rambler sounded old-fashioned in a rapidly changing market. AMC responded by phasing out the nameplate in favor of a more modern image, introducing cars like the AMC Rebel, Javelin, and Hornet. By 1970, the Rambler name was gone from American showrooms. LaSalle, 1927 to 1940. LaSalle was created by General Motors in 1927 as a companion brand to Cadillac, designed to fill the price gap between Cadillac's ultra-luxury models and Buick's high-end offerings. Harley Earl, GM's newly appointed design chief, was tasked with giving LaSalle a distinct identity. The result was one of the first cars shaped by true automotive styling rather than pure engineering. The early LaSalles were sleek, sporty, and beautifully proportioned, smaller and more affordable than Cadillacs, but with the same aura of prestige. They performed well too, using Cadillac's powerful V8 engines. Through the late 1920s and early 1930s, LaSalle built a reputation for refinement and modern design. However, as the Great Depression deepened, GM's lineup became overcrowded. Buick and Oldsmobile moved up market, narrowing the space for LaSalle. Buyers began seeing it less as a distinct luxury marque and more as a junior Cadillac. By the late 1930s, the two brands shared so much mechanically and stylistically that the distinction between them faded completely. In 1940, GM decided to discontinue LaSalle and absorb its position into the Cadillac line. Peerless, 1900 to 1931. Peerless began producing automobiles in Cleveland, Ohio in 1900 and quickly joined the ranks of America's three Ps: Packard, Pierce Arrow, and Peerless, the trio of luxury car makers that defined pre-Depression American elegance. The company was known for quality, refinement, and precision engineering, offering cars that rivaled Europe's best. By the 1910s, Peerless had established itself as a builder of prestige vehicles. Presidents, business leaders, and wealthy families drove Peerless cars for their understated luxury and advanced technology. The company was among the first to adopt innovations such as enclosed bodies and electric starters, and its attention to fit and finish was unmatched. But when the Great Depression struck, the market for expensive luxury automobiles collapsed almost overnight. Peerless tried to adapt by cutting prices and modernizing its lineup, but sales evaporated. By 1931, production had fallen to fewer than 2,000 cars a year, far below what was needed to survive. Rather than declare bankruptcy, Peerless executives made a pragmatic decision. They shuttered automobile production and converted their Cleveland factory into a brewery, partnering with the Carling Brewing Company after Prohibition ended. REO, 1905 to 1975. REO Motor Car Company was founded in 1905 by Ransom E. Olds, the same man who had created Oldsmobile. After leaving Oldsmobile due to disagreements with management, Olds started REO in Lansing, Michigan, determined to build cars his own way, reliable, well-engineered, and affordable. In its early decades, REO became a respected automaker, known for quality craftsmanship and innovation. Its touring cars and trucks earned loyal customers, and by the 1910s, REO was one of the top U.S. manufacturers by sales. Ransom Olds' leadership and reputation gave the company credibility in an industry still defining itself. But as the automobile market grew more competitive, REO struggled to keep pace with the massive scale and pricing power of Ford, GM, and Chrysler. The company gradually shifted its focus from passenger cars to commercial trucks. By 1936, REO had completely ended car production, dedicating itself to building heavy-duty trucks and buses. That pivot sustained REO for several more decades, but competition remained fierce. The company went through multiple ownership changes, mergers, and reorganizations before finally filing for bankruptcy in 1975. Crosley, 1939 to 1952. Crosley Motors was founded in 1939 by Powell Crosley Jr., a successful entrepreneur best known for his radio and appliance empire. He believed that affordable, efficient cars would appeal to practical American families, especially in a world still recovering from the Great Depression. Crosley's cars were small, lightweight, and inexpensive, often costing less than $900. They were powered by tiny engines and built for fuel economy at a time when big cars dominated the market. During World War II, Crosley built military vehicles and engines, then resumed civilian production in 1946 with a new lineup of compact cars, wagons, and convertibles. The company's engineering was ahead of its time. Crosley introduced America's first mass-produced overhead cam engine and was among the first to use disc brakes. These innovations, however, weren't enough to overcome one major problem. Buyers didn't want miniature cars once the post-war boom began. By the late 1940s, gasoline was cheap, highways were expanding, and Americans were gravitating toward larger, more powerful vehicles. Mechanical issues, including reliability problems with its early Cobra copper-brazed engine, further damaged the brand's reputation. Sales collapsed, and in 1952, Crosley Motors shut down. Checker, 1922 to 1982. Checker Motors Corporation, based in Kalamazoo, Michigan, was founded in 1922 and became synonymous with one thing: the American taxicab. While the company did sell vehicles to the public, its identity was built entirely around reliability, simplicity, and durability for commercial use. Checker's cars were boxy, spacious, and built to survive years of constant driving. The most famous model, the Checker Marathon, introduced in 1961, became an icon of New York City streets. With its wide doors, cavernous interior, and bulletproof mechanicals, it was the cab that seemed impossible to wear out. For decades, Checker thrived as the go-to supplier for taxi fleets across America. The company's no-nonsense engineering and conservative design philosophy gave it a unique appeal, reliability over style. But that same conservatism eventually became its weakness. By the late 1970s, competition from larger automakers offering cheaper fleet deals squeezed Checker's margins. New federal safety and emissions regulations made it even harder for the small manufacturer to keep its old design compliant. Production costs rose, and volume fell. In 1982, after 60 years of continuous production, Checker built its final car, a Marathon that rolled off the line unchanged from a design 2 decades old. The company survived for a while as a parts supplier before closing completely in 2009. American Bantam, 1936 to 1941. American Bantam was a small company with a big legacy. Founded in 1936 in Butler, Pennsylvania, it specialized in building compact, affordable cars at a time when most Americans preferred large sedans. Bantam's small cars were based on British Austin designs, efficient, lightweight, and ideal for city driving. But in the U.S. market of the late 1930s, they never caught on. Sales were slow, and the company struggled to stay afloat. Then, in 1940, Bantam achieved something extraordinary. When the U.S. Army sought a lightweight four-wheel drive reconnaissance vehicle, Bantam delivered the first working prototype, the Bantam Reconnaissance Car, in just 49 days. It became the direct ancestor of the Jeep. Despite creating the design, Bantam lacked the production capacity to meet wartime demand. The government gave mass production contracts to Willys-Overland and Ford, who refined and built the Jeep in huge numbers. Bantam, meanwhile, was relegated to producing trailers and support equipment. After the war, Bantam tried returning to civilian car production but couldn't regain momentum. In 1941, the company built its last automobile, American Bantam, 1936 to 1941. American Bantam was a small company with a big legacy. Founded in 1936 in Butler, Pennsylvania, it specialized in building compact, affordable cars at a time when most Americans preferred large sedans. Bantam's small cars were based on British Austin designs, efficient, lightweight, and ideal for city driving. But in the U.S. market of the late 1930s, they never caught on. Sales were slow, and the company struggled to stay afloat. Then, in 1940, Bantam achieved something extraordinary. When the U.S. Army sought a lightweight four-wheel drive reconnaissance vehicle, Bantam delivered the first working prototype, the Bantam Reconnaissance Car, in just 49 days. It became the direct ancestor of the Jeep. Despite creating the design, Bantam lacked the production capacity to meet wartime demand. The government gave mass production contracts to Willys-Overland and Ford, who refined and built the Jeep in huge numbers. Bantam, meanwhile, was relegated to producing trailers and support equipment. After the war, Bantam tried returning to civilian car production but couldn't regain momentum. In 1941, the company built its last automobile, Marmon, 1902 to 1933. The Marmon Motor Car Company, based in Indianapolis, began in 1902 as a maker of finely engineered luxury cars. Founded by Howard C. Marmon, the company focused on precision manufacturing and advanced engineering, producing some of the most refined automobiles of the early 20th century. Marmon earned a reputation for innovation. It introduced aluminum components to reduce weight, precision-balanced engines for smoothness, and sophisticated mechanical designs that set it apart from mass-market brands. In 1911, a Marmon Wasp, driven by Ray Harroun, won the inaugural Indianapolis 500, becoming the first car to feature a rear-view mirror. The victory cemented Marmon's name in racing and engineering history. Through the 1920s, Marmon competed at the top of the American luxury market alongside Packard, Pierce Arrow, and Cadillac. Its cars were elegant, powerful, and meticulously built. But the Great Depression devastated sales of high-end vehicles, and even Marmon's crowning achievement, the 16, introduced in 1931 with a magnificent 16-cylinder engine, arrived too late to save the company. By 1933, Marmon ceased automobile production. The company reorganized into Marmon Harrington, shifting focus to trucks and all-wheel drive conversions. Dutz, 1911 to 1935. Dutz Motor Car Company, founded in 1911 in Indianapolis, earned its fame from the start with its motto, "The car that made good in a day." That slogan referred to the very first Stutz racer, which was entered into the inaugural Indianapolis 500 before the company had even been formally organized, and finished 11th. That racing pedigree became the foundation of Stutz's identity. Through the 1910s and 1920s, Stutz cars combined speed, style, and engineering excellence. They were powerful, elegant, and expensive, appealing to buyers who wanted performance without sacrificing luxury. The Stutz Bearcat, introduced in 1912, became an American icon, one of the earliest true sports cars, famous for its low stance and minimalist design. By the late 1920s, Stutz was competing head-to-head with Packard and Duesenberg, introducing advanced technology like the DOHC straight-8 engine and hydraulic brakes. But as the Great Depression took hold, the market for high-performance luxury cars evaporated. Financial troubles worsened when a stock manipulation scandal involving company president Charles Schwab and Wall Street speculators rocked investor confidence. Despite attempts to stay afloat with new models, production dwindled. By 1935, Stutz filed for bankruptcy and closed its doors. Franklin, 1902 to 1934. Franklin Automobile Company was founded in 1902 in Syracuse, New York, and quickly became one of America's most innovative automakers. Led by engineer John Wilkinson and industrialist Herbert H. Franklin, the company built its reputation on one core principle: lightweight, air-cooled engineering. At a time when most manufacturers relied on heavy cast-iron engines and water cooling, Franklin used aluminum extensively to reduce weight and air cooling to eliminate radiators and coolant systems. The result was a line of cars that were efficient, smooth, and reliable, even in extreme conditions. Franklins were also known for their comfort. With flexible wooden frames and advanced suspension systems, they offered a remarkably smooth ride on the rough roads of the early 20th century. The brand appealed to doctors, travelers, and professionals who valued dependability over flash. But Franklin's commitment to doing things differently came at a cost. Its specialized engineering made production expensive, and when the Great Depression hit, sales of high-priced cars collapsed. The company tried to expand with new models, but mounting debt and shrinking demand forced it into bankruptcy in 1934. Locomobile, 1899 to 1929. Locomobile started in 1899 in Bridgeport, Connecticut, first producing steam cars before switching to gasoline engines in the early 1900s. The company quickly earned a reputation for quality and engineering excellence, building some of the most advanced and expensive cars in America. By the 1910s, Locomobile was firmly established as a top-tier luxury brand, competing with names like Packard and Pierce Arrow. Its cars were hand-built, durable, and beautifully finished. The Locomobile Model 48, introduced in 1919, became its flagship, an elegant, meticulously engineered automobile that cost as much as a small house. It was known for its smooth, six-cylinder engine and refined craftsmanship. But prestige couldn't protect Locomobile from the changing economics of the industry. The 1920s saw the rise of mass production, and the big three automakers dominated through lower prices and higher volume. Locomobile's small-scale, labor-intensive methods couldn't compete. In 1922, the struggling company was purchased by Durant Motors, William C. Durant's Post, GM Automotive Venture. Durant hoped to use Locomobile as his group's luxury brand, but the plan failed as sales remained stagnant. The onset of the Great Depression in 1929 finished what little remained of the company. Graham Page, 1927 to 1940. Graham Page began in 1927 when three brothers, Joseph, Robert, and Ray Graham, transformed their successful truck business into an automobile manufacturer. They purchased the Page Detroit Motor Car Company and rebranded it as Graham Page Motors, entering the market with solid engineering and bold styling that immediately stood out in the late 1920s. Their cars were modern, powerful, and well-built. Early models featured straight-8 engines and sporty proportions that appealed to upper-middle-class buyers. In the early 1930s, the company introduced the Blue Streak, designed by Amos Northup, which became one of the most influential car designs of the decade. Its flowing fenders, low stance, and aerodynamic lines helped define the streamlined style that would dominate the industry in years to come. But even great design couldn't save Graham Page from the harsh realities of the Great Depression. Sales plunged, and despite innovation, including supercharged engines and affordable performance models, the company's finances deteriorated. By 1940, automobile production ended completely. The Grahams shifted focus to wartime manufacturing and later invested in real estate, even helping develop New York's Chrysler Building, Terraplane, 1932 to 1938. Terraplane was introduced in 1932 by the Hudson Motor Car Company as a lower-priced companion brand. At a time when the Great Depression had crushed new car sales, Hudson needed something smaller, cheaper, and more efficient, and the Terraplane delivered exactly that. Originally called the Essex Terraplane, it combined lightweight with strong performance, powered by advanced straight-6 and even straight-8 engines that outperformed many larger competitors. The car's name, evoking plains of the earth, reflected its modern image and Hudson's marketing flair. The Terraplane quickly earned a reputation for speed and durability. It was popular among law enforcement and notorious bootleggers alike, thanks to its power-to-weight ratio and tough construction. Even celebrity aviator Amelia Earhart helped promote the brand, linking it to the excitement of modern aviation. By the mid-1930s, Terraplane was outselling Hudson's own cars, a success that ironically caused problems. Management at Hudson disliked that the lower-priced line was overshadowing the parent brand. In 1938, the company decided to drop the Terraplane name and consolidate all vehicles under the Hudson badge. Essex. 1918 to 1932. The Essex Motor Company was launched in 1918 by Hudson as a lower-cost companion brand designed to reach a broader market. At the time, most cars were still expensive, heavy, and difficult to maintain. Essex changed that by offering a reliable, lightweight automobile at a price the average American family could afford. The brand made its biggest impact in 1922 with the introduction of the closed coach, a fully enclosed steel body car priced close to that of a traditional open touring model. That innovation reshaped the industry. Within a few years, enclosed cars became the standard rather than a luxury. The Essex became known for comfort, value, and solid engineering, helping Hudson climb into the top 10 U.S. automakers. By the late 1920s, however, competition in the low-price segment intensified, and sales began to slide. Hudson tried to update the line with more power and flashier styling, but the onset of the Great Depression made buyers even more cost-conscious. In 1932, Hudson replaced the Essex with the Terraplane, a sleeker, more modern model meant to revive interest in affordable performance. The move worked, but it also marked the end of the Essex name. AMC, American Motors. 1954 to 1988. American Motors Corporation was formed in 1954 from the merger of Nash and Hudson, the largest corporate consolidation in U.S. automotive history up to that time. The goal was simple: to create a fourth major American automaker capable of competing with Ford, GM, and Chrysler. AMC began by focusing on what the Big Three ignored: compact, affordable, fuel-efficient cars. Models like the Rambler became hugely popular in the late 1950s, earning AMC a reputation for practicality and innovation. Under CEO George Romney, the company marketed its cars as sensible alternatives to Detroit's excess, and for a time, it worked. AMC even became the nation's third-largest automaker by 1960. As tastes changed, AMC adapted. The company produced the sporty Javelin, the offbeat Gremlin, and the rugged Jeep, which it had acquired in 1970. Jeep would become AMC's most valuable asset, carrying the company through the oil crises of the 1970s when fuel-efficient 4x4s suddenly became desirable. But by the 1980s, AMC was struggling again. It lacked the resources to modernize its lineup, and quality issues began to show. In 1987, Chrysler saw opportunity in the Jeep brand and purchased AMC outright, absorbing its operations by 1988. Eagle, 1988 to 1998. Eagle was launched in 1988 by Chrysler, following its acquisition of American Motors Corporation. The brand was essentially built to house the remnants of AMC's lineup and to serve as Chrysler's import fighter division, during a time when Japanese automakers were rapidly gaining market share in the U.S. At first, Eagle showed promise. Its early models, like the Eagle Premier and Medallion, were inherited from AMC's partnership with Renault and featured European design and engineering. A few years later, the Eagle Talon, developed with Mitsubishi, gave the brand credibility among performance enthusiasts. Other models, including the Summit, Vision, and Talon TSI AWD, helped position Eagle as Chrysler's experimental, tech-forward division. But the brand never truly found its identity. Eagle cars were mostly badge-engineered versions of vehicles from Chrysler's other divisions or its international partners. Marketing was inconsistent. Dealerships were confused about how to position the cars, and the public didn't see Eagle as distinct from Dodge or Plymouth. By the mid-1990s, Chrysler began consolidating its lineup and focusing on stronger brands like Jeep and Dodge. Eagle's sales dwindled, and by 1998, the division was quietly discontinued. Rickenbacker, 1921 to 1927. Rickenbacker Motor Company was founded in 1921 by World War I flying ace Eddie Rickenbacker, one of America's most celebrated heroes. His name gave the new car immediate recognition, and the company set out to build automobiles that reflected his reputation for precision and courage. From the beginning, Rickenbacker cars were marketed as advanced, driver-focused machines. They were solidly engineered, well-built, and stylish for the time, but their greatest innovation came in safety. In 1922, Rickenbacker became one of the first manufacturers to equip all of its cars with four-wheel brakes, a feature that was rare and controversial in the early 1920s. While it made the cars safer, many buyers and even rival automakers were skeptical, believing four-wheel braking to be dangerous or unnecessary. Despite critical acclaim for its engineering, the company struggled financially. Its cars were priced higher than competitors, and its dealer network was limited. Eddie Rickenbacker left the company in 1926 amid growing financial pressure, and just a year later, the firm went into receivership. By 1927, production ended, and the Rickenbacker brand disappeared after fewer than 35,000 cars had been built. Durant, 1921 to 1932. The Durant Motor Company was founded in 1921 by William C. Durant, the visionary who had co-founded General Motors and twice served as its president. After being ousted from GM for the final time, Durant set out to build a new automotive empire, one that could rival the company he had created. His strategy mirrored GM's own structure, multiple brands covering every market segment. Under the Durant Motors umbrella were marques like Star, Flint, Locomobile, and Mason Truck, with Durant cars positioned as mid-priced competitors to Chevrolet and Ford. The early years were full of optimism, and production ramped up quickly. Durant even opened plants across North America and overseas, hoping to replicate GM's global reach. For a brief time, it worked. Durant's cars were well-built, stylish, and competitively priced, but rapid expansion stretched the company thin. By the late 1920s, the industry was consolidating, and Durant lacked the massive capital reserves needed to compete with the Big Three. When the stock market crashed in 1929, his fragile network of brands collapsed almost overnight. By 1932, Durant Motors was bankrupt, and William Durant's dream of a second automotive empire was over. Maxwell, 1904 to 1925. Maxwell Motor Company began in 1904 and quickly became one of America's most respected early automakers. Known for quality and dependability, Maxwell was part of the first wave of major manufacturers alongside Ford, Buick, and Oldsmobile. Its cars were solid, well-engineered, and aimed squarely at the growing middle-class market. During the 1910s, Maxwell ranked among the nation's top producers, building hundreds of thousands of cars a year and earning a loyal following. The brand's advertising highlighted reliability and practicality. It was the kind of car you bought once and drove for years. But rapid expansion and uneven management in the post-World War I economy began to strain the company's finances. By the early 1920s, Maxwell was deeply in debt and its products were aging. In 1921, a talented Chrysler Corporation executive named Walter P. Chrysler was brought in to rescue the struggling firm. He immediately began modernizing production and introducing new technology, including a six-cylinder engine that impressed both dealers and buyers. Chrysler reorganized Maxwell Chalmers into the Chrysler Corporation in 1925, ending the Maxwell name but preserving its infrastructure and workforce. Many of the first Chrysler models were directly derived from Maxwell designs. Chalmers, 1908 to 1924. The Chalmers Motor Company was founded in 1908 in Detroit and quickly rose to prominence as one of America's early quality automakers. Named after industrialist Hugh Chalmers, the company built cars that balanced performance, reliability, and luxury, a combination that appealed to professionals and business owners during the expanding automobile boom of the 1910s. Chalmers cars were known for solid engineering and smooth operation. They offered advanced features for the time, including efficient 4- and 6-cylinder engines, electric starters, and refined interiors. The company even sponsored endurance races and reliability tours to showcase its cars' toughness and engineering integrity. However, as the 1920s began, Chalmers struggled to compete with mass-production automakers like Ford and Dodge, whose assembly line efficiency allowed them to undercut prices. Chalmers' production costs were high, and its cars were no longer distinctive enough to justify their premium. In 1922, Walter P. Chrysler was brought in to reorganize the troubled Maxwell-Chalmers group. He modernized operations, improved quality, and consolidated the product lines. By 1924, the Chalmers brand was discontinued as Chrysler prepared to launch his own namesake company using the same factories and workforce. Willys, 1908 to 1928. The Willys Motor Vehicle Company was founded in 1908 in Moline, Illinois, by Willard Willys, a member of the John Deere family, who used his background in manufacturing to produce high-quality automobiles. Willys cars were solidly built, moderately priced, and marketed toward buyers who wanted something a step above the average touring car, but below the luxury bracket. From the beginning, Willys emphasized durability and craftsmanship. The company built many of its own components, including engines, rather than relying entirely on outside suppliers. That self-sufficiency gave Willys cars a reputation for reliability and mechanical integrity. During the 1910s, the brand expanded rapidly and even introduced innovations such as electric starters and four-wheel brakes before they became industry standards. Willys also showed an adventurous side. It briefly produced trucks and aircraft engines, and later helped establish the Mono Aircraft Corporation, which built small airplanes using Veli power plants. However, by the late 1920s, the automotive industry was consolidating, and small independent manufacturers found it nearly impossible to compete with the scale and pricing power of Detroit's giants. In 1928, following Willard Veli's sudden death, the company ceased automobile production altogether. Chandler, 1913 to 1929. The Chandler Motor Car Company was founded in 1913 in Cleveland, Ohio, by former Lozier Motor Company executive Frederick C. Chandler. From the beginning, the company focused on building high-quality, mid-priced automobiles that emphasized refinement and reliability rather than extravagance. Chandler's cars quickly earned a strong reputation. They were solidly engineered, used dependable six-cylinder engines, and offered understated style for a reasonable price. The company also produced the Cleveland 6, a slightly smaller and more affordable companion model, giving it a diverse lineup for middle-class buyers. By the early 1920s, Chandler was thriving. Production peaked at more than 20,000 cars a year, placing it among the larger independents. The brand's slogan, "Sixes for Quality," summed up its appeal: practical luxury without unnecessary flash. But the second half of the decade brought challenges. The post-war boom ended, and intense competition from the Big Three squeezed mid-sized automakers. Chandler's limited resources made it difficult to modernize or expand marketing. In 1928, the struggling company was acquired by Hupp Motor Car Company, maker of the Huppmobile. Chandler production ended in 1929, just before the Great Depression struck. Oakland, 1907 to 1931. Oakland Motor Car Company was founded in 1907 in Pontiac, Michigan, by Edward Murphy and Alanson Brush. The company specialized in mid-priced cars that offered a balance between affordability and refinement. Oakland quickly gained attention for its smooth-running four-cylinder engines and solid craftsmanship, and in 1909 it caught the eye of General Motors founder William C. Durant, who made Oakland one of GM's earliest acquisitions. Under GM, Oakland occupied the slot between Chevrolet and Oldsmobile, serving as the brand for buyers who wanted something a little nicer than a Chevy, but not as expensive as a Buick. Oakland cars were well-built and reliable, but they struggled to stand out in GM's growing portfolio. In 1926, GM introduced Pontiac as a companion brand to Oakland, smaller, cheaper, and marketed with more youthful energy. Pontiac was an instant hit, outselling Oakland within a year. As the Great Depression took hold, it became clear which brand had staying power. By 1931, GM discontinued Oakland entirely, keeping Pontiac as the replacement. Wills St. Clair, 1921 to 1927. Wills St. Clair was the creation of C. Harold Wills, one of Henry Ford's earliest engineers and the man who helped design the original Model T and Ford's famous blue oval logo. After leaving Ford in 1919, Wills used his earnings to start his own car company in Marysville, Michigan, determined to build a vehicle that reflected his perfectionism and engineering ideals. Introduced in 1921, Wills St. Clair automobiles were beautifully built and technologically advanced. They used a lightweight V8 engine, fine materials, and precise construction uncommon for the era. Every car was carefully inspected, and Wills insisted on strict quality control, sometimes to the point of delaying production. The company's mascot, a Canada goose in flight, symbolized grace, precision, and endurance. Despite their excellence, Wills St. Clair cars were expensive to produce and sell, placing them in direct competition with established luxury brands like Packard and Cadillac. Production never reached sustainable levels, and Wills's perfectionism drove costs even higher. The cars were admired by engineers and enthusiasts, but were too costly for the market of the 1920s. By 1927, after producing around 12,000 cars, the company ran out of capital and closed its doors. Jordan, 1916 to 1931. The Jordan Motor Car Company was founded in Cleveland, Ohio, in 1916 by Edward S. Ned Jordan, a former advertising executive at Page Detroit. While many automakers of the era emphasized engineering, Jordan understood the emotional side of car ownership. He believed automobiles should sell dreams, not just transportation. Jordan's cars were mechanically sound, using reliable Continental engines and conventional chassis designs, but what set the brand apart was its marketing. The company's advertising was revolutionary. Jordan didn't describe horsepower or torque. He painted vivid pictures of freedom, youth, and adventure. The most famous ad, Somewhere West of Laramie, 1923, depicted a woman speeding across the desert in a Jordan Playboy. It's now considered one of the most iconic automotive ads ever written. The cars themselves were elegant and stylish, appealing to buyers who wanted individuality and flair. Jordan offered bold color choices, rakish body styles, and names like Silhouette and Tomboy, all designed to evoke personality. But despite its creativity, Jordan couldn't survive the Great Depression. Sales collapsed in the early 1930s, and the company shut down in 1931. Cole, 1909 to 1925. Cole Motor Car Company was founded in 1909 in Indianapolis by Joseph J. Cole, a talented engineer who believed automobiles should combine luxury with modern engineering. The company quickly established itself in the premium segment, competing with brands like Cadillac and Packard. Cole was an innovator. In 1915, it became one of the first American manufacturers to offer a V8 engine across its entire lineup, years before most competitors adopted the technology. Its slogan, "The Standardized Car," reflected a commitment to quality, simplicity, and consistent design. Cole cars were elegant, well-built, and praised for performance and smoothness. During the 1910s, the company prospered. Cole built stylish touring cars and sedans that appealed to well-heeled customers who wanted luxury without ostentation. But after World War I, the market began shifting rapidly. The post-war economic downturn and fierce competition from larger automakers with mass production capabilities hurt smaller independents like Cole. Despite introducing new models and maintaining high standards, sales declined steadily through the early 1920s. Rather than compromise on quality or enter bankruptcy, Joseph Cole chose to close the company voluntarily in 1925. Moon, 1905 to 1930. The Moon Motor Car Company was founded in 1905 in St. Louis, Missouri, by Joseph W. Moon, who had previously been a carriage builder. From the start, Moon cars were known for solid engineering, fine craftsmanship, and elegant design. They were mid-priced vehicles aimed at the growing market of middle-class Americans who wanted something more refined than a Ford but less costly than a Packard. In its early years, Moon enjoyed steady success. The company built reliable six-cylinder cars and gained a loyal regional following. Its advertising emphasized honesty and quality, a name you can trust on a car you'll be proud to own. By the 1920s, Moon was producing stylish touring cars and sedans that were well regarded for performance and comfort. But the late 1920s brought challenges. The market became saturated with mid-priced brands, and Moon's smaller scale made it difficult to compete with Detroit's giants. In an attempt to stay relevant, the company launched two companion marques, Diana, a more luxurious line, and Windsor, a budget alternative. Both failed to gain traction. Financial troubles deepened, and by 1930, the company shut down, just as the Great Depression began to devastate the auto industry. Elcar, 1915 to 1931. The Elcar Motor Company grew out of the Elkhart Carriage and Motor Car Company in Elkhart, Indiana, a region once rich with small-scale automakers. Founded in 1915, Elcar began building high-quality, hand-assembled automobiles aimed at buyers who valued craftsmanship and quiet refinement over mass production. Elcar cars were never flashy, but they were solidly built and well-finished. The company used reliable Continental engines, offered advanced mechanical features, and maintained a reputation for comfort and durability. During the 1920s, Elcar's cars earned steady respect in the Midwest, with stylish sedans and touring cars that competed in the same space as Chandler, Moon, and other regional independents. However, like many smaller manufacturers, Elcar struggled to adapt to the rise of mass production and the price wars launched by Ford and Chevrolet. The Great Depression delivered the final blow. With sales collapsing and financing drying up, Elcar entered receivership in 1931. That same year, its last cars rolled out of the Indiana plant, beautifully made but hopelessly out of step with the times. Scripps Booth, 1913 to 1922. Scripps Booth was founded in Detroit in 1913 by James Scripps Booth, a young designer and artist from the family that owned the Detroit News. He was fascinated by both luxury and innovation, and his cars reflected that mix of creativity and engineering ambition. The company's first vehicle, the B Autogo, was an eccentric V8-powered motorcycle car hybrid built as an experiment. When production began, Scripps Booth offered small but elegant cars, compact luxury vehicles that combined advanced technology with refined styling. Early models featured electric starters, fine wood interiors, and even hidden tool compartments, setting them apart from mass-market cars. By 1916, the company introduced the Scripps Booth V8, one of the first American cars to feature that engine layout in a small chassis. It was a bold move, blending power and sophistication in a lightweight package. The car received praise for innovation but was costly to produce. In 1918, Scripps Booth was acquired by General Motors, which aimed to use the brand to fill the niche between Chevrolet and Oakland. But under GM's control, the cars lost their individuality. Sales dropped sharply, and by 1922, GM discontinued the brand entirely. Winton, 1897 to 1924. The Winton Motor Carriage Company, founded in 1897 by Scottish-born engineer Alexander Winton in Cleveland, Ohio, was one of America's first and most important automobile manufacturers. It helped introduce the country to the very idea of the motor car at a time when most people still relied on horses. Winton's cars were among the first to be built and sold commercially in the United States. In 1898, the company sold its first vehicle, widely regarded as one of the first retail automobile sales in the country. By 1901, Winton's name was known nationwide thanks to a well-publicized endurance run from Cleveland to New York City, which demonstrated the reliability of his cars. That same trip inspired a Vermont mechanic named Henry Ford to build a better car of his own. Throughout the early 1900s, Winton cars were known for precision engineering and durability. The company produced luxury vehicles for affluent buyers and even established one of America's first long-distance automobile dealerships. Winton also manufactured engines for early aircraft and boats, showing his wide-ranging mechanical talent. But by the 1920s, Winton's small-scale production methods and high prices couldn't compete with Ford's assembly line efficiency or GM's vast marketing reach. As affordable cars flooded the market, demand for Winton's expensive hand-built models collapsed. In 1924, after producing roughly 22,000 cars, Winton closed its automobile division to focus on diesel engines, a field where it would later thrive. DeLorean, 1975 to 1982. DeLorean Motor Company was founded in 1975 by John Z. DeLorean, a former General Motors executive who had helped create muscle car icons like the Pontiac GTO. Ambitious and charismatic, DeLorean wanted to build a car that defied Detroit's conventions. A futuristic, safe, and ethical sports car designed for a new era. The result was the DeLorean DMC-12, introduced in 1981. With its brushed stainless steel body, gull-wing doors, and sleek Giorgetto Giugiaro design, the car looked like something from the future. But beneath the styling, reality was less glamorous. The DMC-12's underpowered V6 engine and heavy body made performance sluggish compared to its looks, and early quality control problems from the company's factory in Northern Ireland hurt its reputation right out of the gate. DeLorean faced immediate financial trouble as production costs soared and sales lagged. In 1982, desperate to save his company, John DeLorean was arrested in a federal sting operation and accused of drug trafficking in a deal that appeared to be an attempt to raise money for his failing company. He was later acquitted. The jury ruled he had been entrapped, but by then, the company was finished. Only about 9,000 DMC-12s were ever built. Though DeLorean collapsed in scandal and bankruptcy, its car found new life in pop culture. The DMC-12 became a legend after its starring role as the time machine in Back to the Future.